Hey, good evening, everybody, from the Shape International Band in Mons, Belgium. I'm Chief Warrant Officer 4 James Betancourt, Director of the Shape International Band. Next to me, we've got...
I'm Sergeant First Class Mike Agee with the Shape International Band and also the NATO Jazz Orchestra leader. We have a special guest this evening, Roger Ingram. Roger Ingram is one of the most dominant jazz lead trumpet players in the music industry today. For decades, he has toured and recorded with some of the biggest names in the business, including Wynton Marsalis, Connick Jr., Arturo Sandoval, Ray Charles, Woody Herman, Maynard Ferguson, Tom Jones, Paul Anka, Louis Bellson, the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra, Quincy Jones, Frank Sinatra, and Chico O'Farrill. As a session musician, Roger played on hundreds of recordings and commercials. 5 of the albums that Roger played lead on were nominated for Grammy consideration, and 2 of those albums won Grammy Awards. In 1996, Roger played lead trumpet on the album Blood on the Fields by Wynton Marsalis and the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra, which won the very first Pulitzer Prize in jazz in 1997. So Roger's busy schedule includes a lot of recording, playing live performances. He's an educator. He's a teacher. He stays pretty busy doing masterclasses and lessons online. So we have him here tonight. How's it going, Roger?
Hello. How are you?
Hey, good evening from us. Good morning to you. And we really want to thank you for doing this interview. We're pretty excited about it. Love the tune and looking forward to chatting with you.
It's a really nice arrangement. Everything Bill Holman does is so great, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I've done it a few times with some bands, with some local Chicago bands. And then before we decided to do this project, I went online and I heard a lot of versions that other people have done, you know, where they've taken a lot of liberties that, I don't know, didn't really showcase the arrangement the way Bill Holman had intended it to. So I made the decision just to read it straight down as it was written. And your band sounded great.
Thanks.
Yeah, really nice band over there. For that solo with Begin to Begin, because I've known Doc since I was a kid too, I wanted it to have the right sound, and that RCA 44, that mic picked up so much of my sound, you can do anything with it. So I thought that would be the appropriate studio to do this one little project in, you know.
Yeah, we've got a really good sound guy. What you gave him, he went, yeah, this is fantastic.
I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear it, you know. I mean, I played it. I listened to playback, and the thing with that solo, I mean, you see how it was written in my part. He gave you a choice of notes that you could end on.
Right.
And one of them was the B, and I said I'm going to end on the B, you know. But everything else, I tried to play it with kind of like. I'm not going to try to sound like Doc, but I want to pay tribute to him because he would play it real clean. You know, I was saying, I'm not going to go down, on it. I mean, or something like that. I'm just going to play it clean the way Doc would play on the show. You know,
Right?
Yeah. So you were saying with Harry, and you also toured with Frank and Sinatra.
Yeah, Frank Sinatra. So you toured with Frank. I think you were doing something at the same time. So the trumpet section was Walt Johnson. Is that correct?
Walt Johnson was Frank's lead trumpet player for over 20 years. And this happened during the time I was living in Florida. I started becoming what is known as a snowbird. And during the winter months, I would go down to Florida because that was the season down there. And I was working with the local club date leader named Peter Graves. And he was also the contractor for all the big theaters down there in Miami. And one of Frank Sinatra's last tours, it was a 10-day tour, he hired the Miami band. And of course, from growing up in Los Angeles, I had known Walt Johnson for ever since I started playing the trumpet. So I was just a member of the trumpet section with him. And Frank Sinatra Jr. was the conductor. Peter Graves was the contractor. And this was towards the late 90s. I kept a place in Florida for about 8 years. So this was, I think we did that tour. It was either 96 or 97. The Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, we weren't there like 52 weeks a year. We would rehearse when Wynton would write a new work, and then we would tour it. And then I had a lot of time where I wasn't working with Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, just like it is now with those guys. And Walt is, just such a marvelous lead trumpet player. And I learned so much from him. In fact, we were just last week or about 2 weeks ago, for a singer here in Miami, we recorded Luck Be a Lady and That's Life just 2 weeks ago here with a Chicago band for a singer who he was one of the founders and the lead singer for Creed and another group called Alter Bridge. And he's on his new album, he's doing a few things as a tribute to Frank Sinatra, and we did Luck Be a Lady. So I got to play the chart again with that 8VA thing on it that, Bud Brisbois played the 8VA on that, and Conrad Gazzo was the lead trumpet player on that. And from what I understand, because I took a couple lessons with Bud Brisbois when I was a kid growing up in Los Angeles. I got 2 trumpet lessons with him when I was about 16. And Gazzo just said, "Hey, Bud, why don't you take that part up an octave?" He said, "That would probably sound great." And what Bud told me about doing an 8VA with Gazzo playing lead underneath you, he said Gazzo's sound, it was a very forward directional sound and very peripheral. He had this huge, all-encompassing, beautiful lead trumpet sound. And Bud said that when he would 8VA something that Gazzo was playing, he said all he had to do is just get close to that slot and it would just bring it in. It was so easy to 8VA him because his pitch was just like spot on and his sound was so encompassing. He said it was just a joy to play something up an octave. And he said, like, for instance, that Luck Be a Lady recording, so it was a thrill to do it. Now, when I did the tour with Sinatra, Walt played all that stuff up. That was one of his lead parts. And but then just a couple of weeks ago here in town, I got to do it again with a great trumpet section here in town. It was me and Kerry Deadman and Art Davis and Doug Scharf. And the conductor and the guy who contracted the session was Mike Smith, who played lead alto with Sinatra for 20 years.
Wow.
He was out there with Walt Johnson, and so it was like, you happen to bring it up, and I just thought about this thing I did a couple of weeks ago. It was a lot of fun, to play that again. So
I maybe heard this on another one of your podcasts or something, one of the interviews that you had done, but specifically on the Blue Light, Red Light album. Was there anything that stands out in your mind about that recording, or what happened during that recording with Harry Connick?
One interesting thing about doing that record, and I forget the exact name of the tune, but Harry wanted the sound of there being a pool cue. Mm-hmm. So they actually brought a pool table into the studio and mic'd it. And right at the time when he wanted that particular effect of the stick hitting the ball, they recorded it like that. Everything was live. He didn't bring in a sample for that, Mm-hmm. It's like it was a Columbia Records thing. So we were there for about a week doing the album. So there was like a huge budget, so they could do things like bring in a truck and have him bring it up the freight elevator, a pool cue just for one little effect. He wanted a real pool table there. So, it was a ridiculous session. And Harry was, like I said, he was at the height of his popularity then, and he got carte blanche pretty much for Columbia Records. He's just like this multi-talented musical genius type of cat, and he was writing all the charts and singing and playing all the piano solos and conducting and running everything.
Yeah.
I mean, Harry was in total control of every single aspect, and it's been 11 years since I've been with him, but I imagine it's still the same way. Harry is like in charge of everything, And so he's sitting there conducting at the session. So I was just interested in I have always just been interested in wanting to be a good, solid lead trumpet player. Play in tune, swing, have good time, observe the dynamics. I had grown up in Los Angeles. I had many opportunities to sit next to Cat Anderson when I was on Louis Bellson's band, and I sat next to Bud Brisway a couple of times over at Los Angeles City College. And after sitting next to those two guys, that kind of cured me of wanting to be known as a high note player.
Right.
Because there's not, and then I've also had an opportunity to sit next to John Faddis, and I've sat next to Maynard Ferguson. I did not have any aspirations to be known as a high note guy, because after sitting next to those guys, that's pretty much what they did. So I always wanted just to be a good lead trumpet player. I've always been a really good sight reader, and to be a reliable, responsible guy and show up and do the gig. And then all of a sudden, this thing with blue light, red light, and because of Harry's popularity with the general public, it got a lot of airplay, and we did it on live TV. Harry had more opportunity to showcase his jazz arrangements more than any other jazz artist because of his popularity as a singer to the general public. So I got known for playing that double D, and so then all of a sudden I get rolled into all these other guys who want to be high note players and everything, and I was kind of like, I never sat around trying to see how high I could play, and all of a sudden he wants a D there. Now I always had but when I got on Harry's band, I could play everything up to a double C, nice and clean and in tune and everything. And I looked at Dan Miller. I said, "How do you play a double D?" And Dan said, "I don't know, play a double C real sharp, And so the first couple takes, I knew enough about approaching the upper register to know that I wasn't just, don't try to kill the note, just try to slot it. Mm-hmm. Just try to get the note, because the very nature of those kind of notes are going to carry anyway. All you have to do is basically just get the note. And so I kind of got it, and then somebody screwed up the take, so we had to go back and do it all over again.
Probably the saxes.
Saxes, and then maybe, and it might have been somebody else screwed up the next one. But by the time we recorded the take that's on the record, that was about the 12th time we had gone through it. And by then, I had become very familiar. I knew exactly where that partial was, and I started becoming a lot more confident and starting putting a little bit more behind it, because I was just sitting there just doing that note again and again, and again and again. And if you keep on doing something, and it was all happening within the span of about a half an hour.
Right.
So, and I was fresh, and man, I started really getting to know where that double D was, to the point to where after we did the final take and Harry was satisfied with it, the engineer said, "Hey, Roger, come in to the booth. I want to show you something." Mm-hmm. He said, "Roger, look at your knob there." And so I saw the little, and I said, "Yeah, what about it?" He goes, "Look where it is." And it was almost off. And he said, "Roger, when we started recording that tune, you were set at the same level as all the rest of the trumpets, but each take it started getting real loud, so he started having to turn me down, because like I said, I started becoming more familiar with that particular slot." Mm-hmm. And I started becoming more confident and putting a little bit more behind it. So basically what you hear on that record is the bleed into the trombone mics. At least that's what Greg Rubin told me, and he's a great engineer. So as far as the blue light, red light session is concerned, that's my most memorable moment of that, and bringing in the billiards table. One more thing about that session is when we recorded "Just Kiss Me," where I had to hold that double C, that long double C at the end. We had worked on it all day, and he wasn't happy with it. And then we all had to fly down to Florida and do a one-hit gig, and then we all flew back to RCA. And he said, "I'm flying the band back to RCA because I want the right take on that particular tune." So we all came back to New York, went back into the studio, and did it again. Wow. And we did it all day. And like I said, he was not overdubbing anything in those days, and I doubt he is now, because he's kind of a purist about that. I don't really know if he's changed his recording, procedure now, but that was a long one, getting the right take on just because it's really fast, and he wrote some really hard things, and it took a while for us to get one good from the beginning to end live take on that particular tune, "Just Kiss Me." So.
Yeah, great.
Over the years, from, as you said, when you started off and a kid and going over in college and other things, how have you changed? Just the way your body changes, has your equipment changed? Are you pretty much playing the same stuff you were from years ago?
Well, when I was high school, I was playing a Bach 37, a Bach Strad brass lacquer, medium large. And then as years went by, I started experimenting with different horns. So during the whole time I was with Tom Jones, I toured with Tom Jones as his lead trumpet player for 6 years, from 1976 until the February of 1982. And during those years, I think Derek Watkins gave me a trumpet when I was over in London. It was a Boozy and Hawks, which was the precursor to his Smith-Watkins horn. And that was a medium-large horn. And then I played an Olds ultrasonic, because at the time Bobby Shew was with Olds, and I played a large bore, one of those, for a while. And then after I left Tom Jones, I joined the Relief Band in Vegas. And the Relief Band, it was the off-night band. We played all the hotel off-nights. Like, for instance, Saturday we would play whatever star act was at Caesar's Palace. And then Sunday we'd play whatever star act was at the Sahara. Then Monday we played the Follies Brazier at the Tropicana. Tuesday we played the Lido show at the Stardust. Wednesday we played the City Lights show, which was at the Flamingo Hilton. And on Thursday we played the Moulin Rouge show, which was at the Hilton. And the hotels, there were so many full orchestras, and every hotel had a full orchestra. There was so much work happening in Vegas during the early 80s that the town required 2 relief bands. 2 bands to play the off nights, because the musicians union said every band has to have one night off a week. And so the hotels got together and arranged it so that all their off nights were on different nights, so that this one unit could come in and play all the off nights. I was on Johnny Haig's relief band, and the other relief band was run by Lou Elias. So when I started working with the relief band, Bobby Shew, who was a big influence on my life, I started taking lessons with him when I was 14. He had gone with Yamaha by then. And they came out with a medium bore horn that Bobby started endorsing. And it was the 636B, which was originally designed by Bob McCoy in New York. And then from that horn, they came up with the 6310Z that Bobby Shew helped design, and then the 8310Z, which Bobby Shew helped design. But it was a medium bore horn. And but I never played Bobby's horn. I always stuck with the 636B. And the 636B at the valve section, it's 445, which is is on the small side of medium. But the thing is the tuning slide was a large bore tuning slide. So it was a dual bore configuration. So if you had a uniform bore horn, 445 all the way through, it would be too tight. It'd be a much too tight horn to play. So during the years that after Vegas went belly up and all the hotels went to tape, I left Vegas because there wasn't anything to do. So I went back to Los Angeles, and then I went on the road with Woody Herman's band. And then we recorded all those albums, and I was still playing that 636B, which was like kind of what the Z horn was designed from, as far as I know, as far as I remember. And I played that horn through the first 3 or 4 years I was with Harry Connick's band. And then, as I said, Harry broke up the band, and that gave me a period there while now I'm living in New York. So I started touring and recording with Ray Charles, Paul Anka, Lincoln Center, all simultaneously. I was the lead trumpet player with those 3 groups at the same time, and depending on how the schedules worked, I would end up just going and bouncing back and forth between all those groups. I switched to a Constellation for a while, and I even played an old balanced action Harry James model Selmer for a while. And then in 2009, Jupiter Exobrass approached me and asked me if I would come up with a design for their new professional line. And that's where we came up with the 1600i, which is also a medium bore horn, but it's 453 at the valves. That's on the large side of medium. And this particular horn is a uniform bore configuration. It's not a dual bore or tri-bore configuration, which means after the taper of the lead pipe and before the taper of the bell tail, the horn is 453 all the way through. And if you examine an old, let's say a 1946 New York Bach medium bore horn, that's also a 453 bore horn. So that's what I'm playing now is that horn. So as far as my equipment is concerned, I started on a medium large Bach, and I played that through the years. I was with Tom Jones for a while, and then during the years I was with Woody and Harry, for the most part, I played that Yamaha 636B, and then they discontinued that model. After they came up with the Z horn, they stopped making the 636B. Well, I didn't really like that Z horn, although Bobby Shoe sounds fantastic on it, and a lot of guys sound fantastic on that horn. But for me, there was certain things about it I didn't like. I really preferred the 636B, And so that led to me designing this horn with Exobrass Jupiter. Everybody's trying to make good horns. Bobby Shoe works really hard with Yamaha to come up with a good commercial horn, and the people over at Bach work really hard. And we're all competitive, but the thing is, the important thing is that we're trying to come out with good products to keep the standard high within the industry. So, that's really the important thing.
Well, hey, Roger, let's go back a little further. So when you first started playing trumpet, well, maybe even before that, do you come from a musical family? What decided, hey, I want to be a trumpet player. I want to be a lead trumpet player, or this is what I want to do. When did that happen in your life?
Well, it goes back to my father. Now I was born in 1957. Okay. My mother was born in 1923. And so, you look at the math, that works out, But my father was born in 1903. He was 20 years older than my mother. And my father he was a commercial artist and an actor, and he did a lot of different things in Los Angeles. So when I was born, my father was 54 years old, and he still had all of the 78 RPM albums that he bought new in the 20s. And he loved jazz. And so before I even picked an instrument to play, there was always Sidney Bechet and Harry James and Louis Armstrong and recordings of Tommy Dorsey's band and Jimmy Dorsey's band and Count Basie. He loved jazz, and he was always playing records because my father's art studio was at home. He was an independent contractor. Now, one of his big accounts was Santa Fe Railroads. He used to do a lot of the advertising for magazine layout and posters for Santa Fe Railroad. And my mother was a dressmaker or a seamstress, and she was also an independent contractor, and she made a lot of the dresses for some of the big movie studios in Los Angeles, like Paramount and MGM and Universal. So they both worked from home, which is great because I always had my parents, and there was music constantly going on in the house. So we had an old marimba in the front room, and the thing is, my dad would be working, and every once in a while he was an amateur saxophone player.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I have two older brothers, and they also played saxophone and clarinet. So when I was 4 and 5 years old, and in those days in Los Angeles, there was actually a jazz station on AM radio. And they'd play a lot of big band music, too. So it was like a nice musical environment. There was big bands, and I was listening to Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and Harry James and Louis Armstrong and Ray Anthony was on the radio, And then my dad would play records, and he'd stop every once in a while and play along. He'd hear something, he'd put his paintbrushes down and play along. Just because, and he'd sing to the records and stuff. So I started picking out little tunes on the marimba when I was 4 and 5 years old to what I would hear to imitate my dad, because every kid wants to imitate their dad, maybe somehow. So I started, and little did I know that was really good ear training, what I started doing. So then my brothers were involved in the band program at school, and they were both playing clarinet, and but they were kind of competitive with each other, and they were very argumentative with each other. My two older brothers, and they used to fight a lot about how to play, and they used to be competitive about who's the best clarinet player. So I didn't want to be involved with any of that, and so I said I'm going to pick a different instrument, but I still wanted to be involved with the band program because. Yep. All of our friends from school were in the band, and it's like I was the kid brother, and then we used to watch Lawrence Welk on TV. Mm-hmm. I think maybe Sunday night or something. It would be on the same night as Ed Sullivan, and I saw a trumpet player come out front and play a solo. Yeah. It might have even been Warren Looning, I'm not sure. And I said, that's what I want to play. I want to play trumpet. Because I thought it would be easy because there's 3 vowels, Little did I know that most of the work happens here, Right. And so I chose the trumpet. So I'm 8 years old, and I'm in 3rd grade, and I'm playing trumpet. And now my family, even though my parents were working all the time, we didn't have a lot of money. And someone just gave us a trumpet. And I played whatever mouthpiece was with the trumpet. I just figured it was a trumpet mouthpiece. And it was a real small mouthpiece. That's how I got used to small mouthpieces. Out of ignorance, I figured it's a trumpet mouthpiece. It's about a 12D, which would, if you wanted to compare it to Bach measurements, that's what I started out, and I didn't know any better. And so we couldn't afford lessons, so my dad got me a used Arbin book, and I read all the text, and my next oldest brother told me everything I needed to know about note value and rest value and key signatures and time signatures, and I showed up to my first day in elementary school band, and I could read because of just what my brother had told me the night before. So I was reading, I learned how to read, and I put myself through the Arvin book, and then I graduated elementary school, and then I went into 7th grade. And I'm answering your question about how I decided I wanted to do this for a living. And so you have to understand that this little community we grew up in Los Angeles was Eagle Rock. It was in between Glendale and Pasadena. It's northeast LA. It's about 11 miles east of downtown Hollywood, So I'm growing up in the mecca of the entertainment industry. It's like the trumpet players who were active the year I started playing trumpet were Gazzo had died the year before in 64. I started playing in 65. You had like John Audino and Ollie Mitchell and John Kleiman and Manny Klein, and I'm just surrounded. I was watching musicians be so successful in the studios. They were buying houses and putting their kids through college just playing the trumpet. So it looked pretty good. Like it might be a good thing to do. So I went into 7th grade, Eagle Rock High School. And it was the last school in the Los Angeles Unified School District one of the last schools where grades 7 through 12 all attended the same school. And the year before I went into 7th grade, a new band director took over the band program there at Eagle Rock High School. His name was John Ronaldo, who was also a professional trumpet player in the Los Angeles scene, right? So I went into 7th grade, and my first day, I signed up for band, and I brought my trumpet, and so he kind of hears everybody play the newcomers to see what band where he's going to place them, And apparently, I did a good job of putting myself through the Arvin book because he put me on the first trumpet chair in all the senior bands, my first day in as a 7th grader. So now I'm under his direction, a professional trumpet player in LA for 6 years.
Yeah.
And then he, when I got to be about 8th grade, he said, Roger, you should really take some trumpet lessons. You got a lot of ability there, but there's a few things that you need to maybe kind of refine and learn how to like triple tongue and stuff like that. And I said, yeah, but, I can't really afford trumpet lessons. And I couldn't study with him because he was my high school band director. There was a rule about that. You couldn't take privately from somebody who was your teacher at high school. So he set it up so I could start mowing lawns in our neighborhood. And we all lived in the same neighborhood. He lived only 4 blocks from me, And with the money I earned mowing lawns, I started studying with this guy named Laroon Holt, who at the time was the second trumpet player in the Lawrence Welk television program. The very program I watched when I saw the trumpet player come out, and play that solo. And he was just in Pasadena, South Pasadena. So I started studying with Laroon Holt, and he said, all right, it's like, we're going to go over some of the stuff you put yourself through with the Arvin book. He said, you did good, but I want you to play a bigger mouthpiece. And so he put me on a Bach mouthpiece. He said, you can still play that mouthpiece for jazz band if you want, but for our purposes, I want you to play a Bach mouthpiece. So he started training me as if I was going to be an orchestral player, even though he knew that I was interested in playing big band and playing jazz. He says, it doesn't matter. He says, everybody needs to go through this. And he had me get the Schlossberg book and the Top Tones for Trumpet book and the Clark book. And he started weekly lessons, and he would assign me 2 or 3 pages out of each book. And I better have it right when I showed up the next week, because he was a kind of a taskmaster, and he was a technical whiz, this guy, Laroon, So I started and the Haydn trumpet concerto, and he had me and two of the other kids from Eagle Rock. We all worked on Bugler's Holiday for the school concert, and we did all that stuff that any kid who was serious about playing trumpet went through. So I started getting that kind of training, and I was mowing lawns and paying for my lessons. And then when I got to be about ninth grade, John Ronaldo, my high school band director, he came in real excited one morning. He goes, "Roger, I just played with this new guy who's in town here who moved here from Las Vegas, and he plays great lead, and he's a great improviser too. His name's Bobby Shue." He said he just moved here to town, and he's breaking into the studios, and he's giving lessons right now. He said, in addition to the lessons you're taking with Laroon, you should go study with Bobby. Mm-hmm. So I started studying with both of them at the same time. Okay, so what made me decide to do this for a living was, first of all, I loved doing it. I was living in Los Angeles, the environment I was in, I was seeing guys like, then Chuck Finley moved to town in '68, and he was becoming a first call guy, and Audino and Buddy Childers, and I started taking the bus into downtown Hollywood, and I started going into Bob Reeves' shop over there off of Melrose and just asking him questions, and you're going, "Oh God, there's that kid." I was only 14. I was, and I'd go in and I'd hang out with Dominic Calicchio. His place was on Willoughby, just up from Local 47 on Vine Street, and I started bugging him, and I'd see all these guys coming in and out of their shops, and I started getting to know, like I met Chuck, and they, "Oh, there's that kid." They used to call me the walking question mark because I was always asking them questions about stuff. I was really interested. And so my next oldest brother, he was, and he still plays, and he was a great tenor player. When I was in about 9th and 10th grade, we started getting asked to go in and do recording sessions in Hollywood, because they could get these couple kids who could read good, and $50 a tune. And by then I could play up to a high G, and we played in tune and we could read good. They started getting us cash dates. I was going in and starting to do sessions, rock and roll dates, and we'd hear the rhythm section and the singers. They already recorded them, and then they wanted to put on horns. So my brother and me, and it was usually like Steve Trope, a trombone player. And I swear, my wife and I, we drive around. She likes to listen to the old rock and roll station. I swear, sometimes I hear some of these things. I say, "Man, I think that's me," on some of this stuff. And I can't be sure because we were just getting the cash. We're talking about a couple of kids in high school in the 70s.
Wow.
We didn't ask a lot of questions. We were taking the money and saying thank you. And then I started playing in church for like $25, and then I started for the American Legion. I started playing taps at funerals, and I'm only 14, 15, 16 years old. I started pulling in when I was in high school, and it's because of the location. Yeah. But sometimes I'd make over $100 in a week when I was in junior high school doing gigs. So you ask me what, and I'll tell you what, by the time I was 20, I co-signed for my parents to buy their first house.
That's great.
Yeah. So, because of the era it was, a lot of pop groups were still using horns. Dean Martin was still alive. Mm-hmm. Sammy Davis was still alive. Sinatra was still alive, Andy Williams, and they were all carrying their own lead trumpet players with the rhythm section. So playing the trumpet was a lucrative deal back then, especially if you're a kid growing up in Los Angeles, that close to Hollywood. So I just went with it, and then I started really focusing on wanting to be a lead player when I found out that these stars besides carrying their own rhythm section, they also carried their own lead player. You know, I used to go over to Los Angeles City College and do rehearsals after high school let out. My dad would drive me over there because they had a pro band that let kids sit in for a few tunes at a time. And I used to get to sit in next to Buddy Childers and Bud Brisboy. And Dennis Farias was another kid my age, and then it was his turn to sit in, and then another kid would come in, and then we'd stand out front and listen to the band. And John Thomas was one of the professionals that was in that group, and I noticed on his trumpet case he had a tag that said Andy Williams, and I was just a dumb 15-year-old kid. I said, "What's that? What's that Andy Williams tag?" He goes, "Well, whenever Andy Williams travels, besides the rhythm section, he brings me. I'm his lead trumpet player." And he says, "And also gigs in town. I'm his lead trumpet player." I said, "So you can travel with one of these acts as their lead trumpet player?" And he said, "Yeah." And so I started focusing on being a lead player. I had a good sound, and I had a good high G, and I was always a good reader. And sure enough, I ended up doing it. I traveled with Connie Stevens for a year, and then I traveled with Tom Jones for like 6 years, and then so it started the whole thing. And so to answer your question, it was all of that made me decide that I was going to do that for a living, you know. But I was always trying to be just a good musician.
Right.
It wasn't about high notes.
Right.
You know, it's like, I mean, be a good reader, play in tune, observe the dynamics, you know, cut everything off. Harry used to like me to hang over. He used to ask me to.
Do it.
There was, in fact, one time we were doing, I think, I forget which one of the albums, but we were in between second trumpet players because the second trumpet players would come and go from that band during the time where I just stayed. So we were in New York doing an album. So I said, "Get Tony Cadlick." Because Tony's a wonderful player, man. He's a cat you really want to have in your trumpet section because he's there for the team, man. He's like such a beautiful, solid player. And we recorded this tune, and Harry put a high A at the end, and I cut it right off. And as I said, Harry doesn't believe in overdone. He said, "Roger," said, "I want you to hang over." And Tony started laughing because, you know, because I was trying to cut off, you know, because I was starting to get a lot of crap from Bobby Shue. He says, "Man, you know, everybody knows who's playing lead. You don't have to be hanging over, you know." So, so I had to think real quick, how much do I need to hang over to satisfy Harry, but to get the least amount of crap from Bobby Shue?
Yeah.
So and then I hung over just enough, and after the cut, Tony said that was just enough. Yeah. But so that's the type of thing, which is really an unprofessional thing to do. I mean, on that band it worked because Harry kind of he wanted there to be a rough edge on that band, where, you know, he wanted that kind of, you know. When I do shows and recordings around here, I don't do that. I cut right off. I mean, that's a sure way to piss off a conductor is to hang over. You know, if you want to work, you don't do that. You know. Anyway, that's how I decided that I wanted to do this for a living, and it was also the era I came up in, and the location I came up in, and you know the fact that the year before I went into 7th grade that a professional trumpet player took over the band program, and he was a go-getter. We started, you know, entering all these high school stage band contests. Yeah. And we had writers. He was commissioning charts just for our band. We started winning a lot of these contests, which answers one of the questions here about how did I get called to go out with the Quincy Jones tour out of high school. You have to realize that most of the adjudicators at these festivals were also the guys working in LA in all the studios, and were also friends with Bobby Shue, who was my teacher. And so Quincy Jones, for that tour, He had just finished producing the Brothers Johnson very first album, right?
Yeah.
So they wanted to do a promotional tour. It was only like a 4 or 6 week tour. I forget exactly how many weeks, but it was in 1976. So it's like about, I don't know, 45 years ago this happened. So I don't know.
45. I was born in 76, so I'm 45. Yeah, you're right.
Right. And so it happened the year you were born. I don't know exactly. I was never sure about how I got called to do it, but a lot of the kids in the LA area who were known as being outstanding in their particular band got called to do it because Quincy he didn't want a bunch of old guys out there. He wanted young, just out of high school kids. Ted Nash got called to do it. My roommate was Tom Kubis.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like Bobby Rodriguez was in the band. So it was called the Quincy Jones Big Band, featuring the Watts Line singers and dancers. We had singers and dancers. It was a whole show. And introducing the Brothers Johnson. Yeah. So we were the backup band for the singers and the dancers and the Brothers Johnson, all Quincy Jones arrangements. And he would come out in a big, colorful dashiki and just, do the whole thing conducting and turn around and saying, I'm Quincy Jones and I wrote all the charts and this is my band. It was a big deal, and I was splitting the lead trumpet book with this. It was a very diverse band. Ricky Lawson was the drummer who went out and did all the Thriller albums with Michael Jackson and everything. He was just a high school kid. And I was splitting the lead book with Danny Cortez, and the young trumpet player Ray Brown was in the trumpet section, and Bobby Rodriguez. And so they called me because we had an award-winning high school band, and they knew of me from when the adjudicators would, sometimes the adjudicators were like Frank Rosolino, and Ray Brown, the bass player, and Bud Brisbane. They had heard me at all these high school contests. And when I graduated, they said, well, get that kid from Eagle Rock. He's a good lead trumpet player. And that's how it happened. He says, I kind of had already built a reputation for myself within the confines of high school kids, and because Quincy wanted such a young band, it worked out, and I went out there and, I was young and dumb and green, but on that trip was the first time I had ever been in Chicago. Yeah. And the first time I had ever toured or anything. Gary Bias was one of the alto players, and he's still with Earth, Wind and Fire, I mean, it's like, it was a good group of kids, So that's how that happened.
Yeah. In between there, where you were talking, so you were, I think, like a junior, possibly. You said you were 16 when you toured with Louis Bellson, because I know there was something about a tour or something that you went on with them. Maybe it was like Vancouver or something that.
Yeah, it was the Belvedere Canadian Jazz Festival.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And it was promoted by a cigarette company, the Belvedere Cigarette Company, And this was the summer of 1974. I was 16. It was between my 11th and 12th year in high school. And in those days, all the musicians would go to Europe. There were so many festivals and there were so many big bands that you'd get, and everybody was booked by early spring. They had all the bands for the summer booked. And Louis Bellson was going to do this tour with his normal big band. And for some reason, the third trumpet player had, whoever it was that was scheduled to do it, had to bail at the last minute. And like I said, everybody else was already booked for the summer. Anybody that Bobby Shue was the lead player in the section, and he kind of ran the section. And whoever that they would normally have gotten to replace the guy for an in-town gig, they couldn't find anybody. So Louis said, well, Bobby, what are we going to do? And Bobby said, well, I have this one kid that's been studying with me. His name's Roger Ingram, and he'd be just fine on the third book. I haven't gotten him improvising yet, but he's going to be a good lead player, and I could give him some of the lead things to play. And it's like, let me call his parents and ask him if he can go. So he called my parents, and my parents said, "Yeah, get him out of the house," And so it was a 10-day tour, and so for 10 days, Bobby Shew was my legal guardian, and I sat. The way the trumpet section is, it was Blue Mitchell was here, and me and Bobby Shew, and I think Frank Szabo and Stu Blumberg were in the section. And then that opened the door for me to start subbing with the band in town. I started playing at Dante's with the band every once in a while. Sometimes I'd sit between Bobby and Connie Condoli. Sometimes I'd sit right next to Cat Anderson. So I started becoming kind of a sub on the band. Now if they had a choice between getting me to sub on the band or Connie Condoli, they'd get Connie Condoli, but I was in the rotation to be able to sub on that band, and it gave me the opportunity to play at Dante's, and so we did that 10-day tour, and I was 16. And I think they paid me like $400 for doing that 10-day tour, which to me, at 16-year-old kid, is like, wow, 1974. So I went out and I bought my first car with that. I bought a 1963 Volkswagen Bug.
Right.
$400. That needed a little work, but my dad was also a good mechanic. He could rebuild an engine. So that was my first car. And then I went back and I finished 12th grade. I went into 12th grade and finished high school. And then after high school, I got that call to go out and do the Quincy Jones
right.
thing, so everything was looking good, and I was always the youngest kid on all these tours I was doing. And then, in those days, like the late 70s, traveling with Tom Jones as a single 18-year-old kid.
Mm-hmm.
And we were out on the road for 10 months a year, and everybody else in the band was at least 10 or 15 years older than me. I started smoking cigarettes, and we get to Canada. I started drinking beer. I started trying to be like one of the older guys. I started developing some habits, which I don't smoke or drink anymore, but for the entirety of the 35 years that I spent out on the road, I was single, and I was for a single guy, I was making good bread. And so I got kind of like wild when I was out there, and then I finally settled down and got married, and I live here in a suburb of Chicago, and I left the road like 11 years ago,
Yeah.
So now it's like, I just work locally. I do a lot of recording, and I do a lot of shows, and I work for a lot of jobbing bands, and it's because that's what I wanted to do. I've done so much traveling.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just nice to actually have a house, and I have the acoustic tile here on the ceiling. This is my basement I'm in right now. I do a lot of recording from home here.
Great.
I got it set up acoustically so it sounds good. That recording we did, I decided to do it over at Massoff's studio because
Right.
he's got the RCA 44. That's so that's what I'm doing now. It's like I have a nice, happy home life here, and I work locally, and I'm pretty content.
You had said in high school when you were doing taps and things with American Legion, have you ever done anything with a military band before? Any guests or solos, guest artists things?
No.
No.
This is the first time.
Wow.
Yeah, this is the first time. And it's just by happenstance. I'm now the guy who plays lead trumpet with the Herman and Note, Brian McDonald. He was my trumpet student when he was in high school.
Wow.
When I was down in Florida.
Yeah.
During those years, he came stay with, and I showed him the whole thing about the breathing method that Bobby Shew and Bud Brisbane told me. I showed him. And I showed him about how I set the chops and everything. And man, that cat took to it like a fish to water, and he's got perfect pitch too.
Yeah.
So I mean, and Brian McDonald's got to be about the most straight ahead cat I've ever met in my life. You know, he's like just a beautiful cat. He's got a nice, beautiful family. He's real reliable. It's like, you know, he's like the most Mr. Honest. You know, Brian McDonald. You know, so as far as the military is concerned, that's been about my closest association, is the fact that one of my students is playing lead trumpet for the Airmen of Note. But, you know, I personally never spent any time in the military, and it's just because of the path my life went in. You know, I might have considered it if I was like 18 years old now.
Yeah,
I might consider going into the military and being part of a military band because of the benefits you get and, you know, the security. I mean, it's like a lot of my students, I suggested. I say, you might want to, you know, check out auditioning for one of these really great bands, you know. And I'm telling you, I heard your band and I said, man, they sound good.
Thanks.
You know, you guys got a good band, you know. So, no, I've never done anything with one of these groups. And now that, you know, we don't have to do everything like, because things are starting to open up after this health crisis. You know, I mean, I'd be willing to do any kind of a live thing too, you know.
Yeah, that would be great too.
That would be, yeah. They have, well, besides the band here, the ones in D.C. are phenomenal, and all the Army, Navy, Air Force, everybody has incredible bands. Really nice places to work with.
Right.
I'm telling you, I like Belgium. In fact, I was on tour in Belgium, and I bought my wife a pair of diamond earrings from Belgium, because that's a big diamond.
Mm-hmm. It is.
I forget the name of the town there in Belgium. What's the main town over there?
Was it Antwerp?
Antwerp, maybe?
Antwerp.
Yeah.
I got her some diamonds in Antwerp. She wears them every day. They're beautiful stones too, you know. But I like Belgium, and I've spent a lot of time in Europe and Copenhagen and England, you know, and yeah, I kind of envy you guys being. I mean, the Belgium's kind of a hit place, you know. I mean, are you enjoying your time there?
Really are. It'll be a lot better when we can travel more.
Right.
Once this thing's completely over. But yeah, we're having a great time.
Yeah, cool, man. I mean, my hat's off to you. Yeah, you guys have. I mean, you think about it. You guys. I mean, the band. I heard the band. It sounds great. You guys get to play with the band all the time, right?
Very much.
And you're living in Belgium.
Yeah, in Belgium.
And you get to enjoy that European lifestyle.
Right.
That's pretty hip, man. You know, like, I was thinking you guys, that's one of the things that made me, you know, interested in doing this project. I said, oh, Belgium, you know. I mean, I'd like to take a trip over there, bring my wife, maybe buy her another ring or something. You know, if you guys ever wanted me to come over, I'd be like, probably.
Absolutely. We'll stay in contact.
As soon as,
you know,
as soon as we can travel, it's definitely an open invitation.
I'm just saying, yeah, you guys have a nice thing going over there, man. So, I mean, if I was of the age to be able to, you know, go into the military now, it would be a consideration.
Mm-hmm. Talking about the his wife just got her second COVID shot, and she's down for the count.
Yeah, I had my second COVID shot over a month ago.
How'd you do?
And I did. We got we took whatever was available. We got the Pfizer.
Yeah.
Right, Vicky.
Yeah.
Yeah. And no reaction at all.
Well,
that's good.
I slept for a day after.
With her, she slept for a day. With me, that I just went and I just worked a gig. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. My wife was down for the count, and I was fine.
Hey, Vicky.
How are you?
Good.
Good.
So I didn't have a reaction, but you know, it's different for everybody. I mean, the music business it changes on a daily basis anyway. The music business is so fickle, and it suffers anyway. It's like, and then we had to have that happen, which just killed a lot of things, you know.
Yeah.
I managed to keep working. I did a lot of recording during the last year.
Sure,
You know,
yeah.
but you know,
Yeah, we just kept seeing things get canceled. It was interesting.
Yeah, because I got here in July of the last year, and I'm counting today, so I probably played about 7 gigs with the Army since
Not counting recording. But
not counting recording. We did a lot of recording, which was great. And but yeah, I played like maybe 7 times.
Yeah, before then
which is crazy.
We were we were hoofing it. We did, I think, 185, at least 185 a year.
Yeah.
Which is another good reason to be in the military. I mean, you guys didn't miss any meals, you know.
Right.
Yeah, true.
Yep.
I mean, there's a lot of people who really have suffered behind all this, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And fortunately, I mean, with the way my wife and I have everything set up here, I mean, we could endure this indefinitely if we had to. But I'm glad that it's starting to look like come back to some semblance of what used to be considered normal, you know.
Yeah. You had a 2-year anniversary. I saw it. It was the Thad Jones Consummation album that you guys did.
I let a memory go to my timeline.
Yeah. But then you announced, which we can talk about it like if you want, but you're doing the entire Kansas City
Suite
from the Count Basie Library.
Right. And this is called the Heritage Jazz Orchestra. It's one of the many groups I work with here in town. And Luke Malevich is a great trombone player. In fact, he was on that Luck Be a Lady date with me a couple of weeks ago. And so he has his own orchestra. And we've done this a number of times. And we did another Basie album. We did the whole Basie Straight Ahead album.
Oh, yeah.
In its entirety. We did Consummation, we did Basie Straight Ahead, and then we were supposed to do the Kansas Suite last summer, but of course it got canceled. Right. So now it's rescheduled again. Yeah, and so he kind of like, it's like we try to duplicate as close as possible. The original recording is kind of a tribute. And it's a lot of work involved with the project, you know. And the thing is when they record those albums, sometimes they do them in 2 days. We're doing the entire album in one sitting, you know. So you have to kind of pace yourself, you know. So
I just love that, you know, recreating some of these albums that, you know, from the past and such, you know, in some ways iconic, you know, when they came out and the artist or the arranger, you know. I love that aspect of it. So can't wait till it comes out. I'm sure maybe on Facebook I can catch it or buy it or something.
Yeah, just pay attention to my timeline. You know, I announce little things. We're going into the studio. You know, I recorded this album. This is another one. This is my Tuesday band that we do, and this album came out. And it got great reviews in Downbeat and Jazz Times. And it was my record company that put the album out. We're going into the studio in a couple of weeks. We're doing a Christmas album.
Oh, great.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, I have, you know, projects and things around here that we're doing with the Heritage Jazz Orchestra, the Pete Elman Big Band, and a lot of teaching. You know, I teach online and I have private students. So, you know, from all those things that I spent all those years, you know, when I was single, traveling the world with all these big star acts and everything, you know, and I have people that ask me, well, don't you miss, like, you know, being out there with big stars? And I said, well, you know, I've kind of created my life so that I can stay put.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
You know, it's like, and I get to back up some celebrities. Like in August, we're backing up Michael Feinstein at Ravinia, you know, and there's acts that come through. But a lot of the big acts now, they don't carry horns. You know, and I don't know if I'm going to get to do Tony Bennett or not because he's like, you know, he's getting up there.
He is.
And I don't know if he's going to be out touring anymore, but
yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the things we're looking forward to is doing that concert, and I got some other things going on, and I try to put a little bit of content out there every day on my Facebook page.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
And I have my website, which is rogeringram.com, and I designed a line of trumpet mutes that are manufactured and distributed by Terry Warburton. I have a whole line of signature mouthpieces that are made by Peter Pickett of Pickett Blackburn. And so he's a great mouthpiece maker. And he also is making the Blackburn trumpets. He's got a beautiful manufacturing facility over in Lexington, Kentucky. So that's another thing that you can find by going to my website. I have a lot of different products there, books, mutes, trumpets, and things like that. And of course, I have my association with Jupiter Exo Brass for the horns and everything. So I have a lot of different products, and if you go to the homepage of my website, there's links for everything, And I always try, it's a good idea to, if you believe in a product and if you think it will be something that will help musicians and help their performance, it's a good idea to take the time and the effort to put some things out there, For this Christmas album that I'm doing with Pete Elman, Wayne Bergeron and I are going to do a duet.
Great.
On a Christmas tune. Now, Wayne Bergeron and I go way back. We've known each other since we were kids, and we'd studied with the same teachers and we're the same age. We were roommates on Maynard's band.
Yeah.
So he lives in LA and I live here, but whenever we go to the ITG or something, we get to hang out and it's like old home week. But we're supposed to do a duet together for the Christmas album. Now, he just went through a big cancer thing. I don't know if you know that, but
I wasn't sure because I saw him in Tokyo when I was stationed in Japan, and of course I know Sal Lozano, second alto, and kind of know Gordon a little bit. And so when I was out in Japan and they came out, so just hanging out with them, and I didn't know that, and that was 2016, I think.
Well, this with Wayne, this happened just last year.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow. Yeah, I haven't seen him. So
during the pandemic, he got diagnosed with throat cancer.
Wow.
And so he had 7 weeks of radiation and chemotherapy. And talk about a bad year for him. And he's been very open about it. I mean, he's you go over to his Facebook page. It's no big secret, And so he's still coming back from that. So the duet we were going to do may be postponed.
Okay.
It might be on the next album, which then again, obviously it won't be a Christmas tune. We'll figure out some other tune to do it. But I'm looking forward to recording with this band, and we have a lot of different things coming up. And I mean, I wrote a couple of books, clinical notes on trumpet playing.
Yes.
And you can also get that through my website. And I also co-authored a duet book that came out last year. So nowadays, to try to keep up with the times, I do, I have the mutes, and I have the mouthpieces and the books and the trumpets and the website, and I try to keep a good, strong social media presence.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of online teaching, and I've done a lot of online clinics, and so I was really very happy to do this thing. And I chose that Doc Severinsen solo because, he kind of retired from playing. Because he's 94 now, And I just came into possession. I'm now the custodian of a huge music library of over 3,000 charts. And those bankers boxes? Yes. Each one of those boxes holds about 40 charts. I got 3 of those of just Holman charts. And I have 3 of those of Bob Florence charts. And I'm getting ready to organize my own band.
Great.
Because I have this huge library. It took us all summer to organize it. and we're now in the stages of digitizing it, because it's all hard copy.
Yeah.
And so I'm particularly excited about. Now, I used to sub on Bill Holman's band during the years I was in Los Angeles. I used to sit right in between Carl Saunders and Ron Stout. I'd sub on that band. So I mean, I know Bill, and he's like 94 or 5 or something now too. Yeah. So, it was particularly nice for me to be able to do a Holman arrangement that was originally written for Doc Severinsen. And when you guys asked me to do this project, I say that's the perfect piece, because it touches upon so many different elements,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're so glad that you jumped in on this project.
And really, when the band heard that, they're who? Roger playing with us? And everybody's very excited. So we hope you enjoyed our part of it.
Well, I hope that you like what I gave you.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yep.
And I know that you did one with my friend Tom Bones Malone too.
Yes, Tom is one of my great friends. I met him years ago. Tom was such a great guy, and we just hit it off. So we've talked ever since. So when this came up again, I was like, Tom, hey, he was the first person that I asked.
Yeah.
He goes, yeah, man, I'll do it. So we haven't finished what his project's going to be yet, but
we just finished up. Danny Falcone's doing a solo with us.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I've known Danny since he was a kid studying in L.A. at USC. He was going to USC, I think, at the time.
Yeah, he's doing Danny Boy. He's doing Maynard's Danny Boy.
Yeah.
We just finished it up, and we're going to send it over to him.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. I'm sure it's going to be great. After I left Harry Connick's band, I gave Danny all the information to get in touch with them in case they wanted to use him out on the road, so... But I've known him a long time.
So let's say in another life, if you can imagine that, if you could be any famous musician or person from the past or present, who would you be and why?
Well, that's kind of a hard one. I think my answer would be I would just like to be a better version of myself. I mean, I'm one of these people that if I had it to do all over again,
right,
I'd probably do a lot of things differently.
Of course, right.
I mean, I probably wouldn't have spent as much time out there on the road as I did. Sometimes I wish, because, after I left the road, I started practicing again.
Mm-hmm.
When I was out there on the road, you were just out on the road, just banging it out. And I did that for 35 years. Now I'm playing C trumpet in a couple of symphony orchestras here.
Great.
And I play in a Dixieland band. I'm doing a lot more improvisation. I play in a brass band. And I've developed in the last 11 years since I left Harry's band, which was the last road band I did. I've improved as a trumpet player. I don't rely on the real small mouthpieces anymore because I'm playing so much I don't need the small equipment, and I can still play just as high as I ever could, but I'm using larger equipment, which gives me more control in a studio situation, more of a robust kind of sound, When I was out there with Harry, we do a 2-hour show. You're only really playing an hour and 25 minutes a day, really. And he wrote everything. That lead trumpet book that he wrote, at least when I was out there, was about a third higher than most lead trumpet books. And in order for me to survive it without hurting myself, I had to turn to playing really small equipment, so that I could live up there and do a credible job with still a decent sound and the kind of time concept that I like to put over on a band. But if I could do it all over again, I probably would have left a lot sooner and started doing all the more developmental things that I've been engaged in the last 11 years. I wish I had started doing that maybe 20 years earlier, But I mean, as far as choosing another person, there's just so many beautiful artists and people out there. I mean, within the lead trumpet community, I guess I would have liked to have been Conrad Gazzo. or Al Pacino or Snooky Young, you know.
Right.
And if I was any one of those guys, especially Conor Ragazzo, I might have, like, you know, watched my health a little closer. I mean, he died at an early age, you know.
Yeah.
Dizzy, I don't think anybody could touch Dizzy.
Right.
You know, I tell you what, I have books and books of transcribed solos. And I've memorized a lot of Lee Morgan solos and a lot of Blue Mitchell solos. And on the few things where I've recorded where I'm improvising, a lot of it is stuff I've just stolen from those people, and I've combined it, but I memorize it all. The stuff, Dizzy, I can't even get close to playing his stuff, you know. I mean, even at half speed. And you really start appreciating what he did when you try to play it. It's like that. I have to say that of all the, and it's not, I mean, there's so many beautiful jazz improvisers out there. The stuff Dizzy did, I can't even get close to doing, you know. I mean, I'm telling you, so there's one person right there that maybe, you know, it would have been fun to be Dizzy Gillespie, you know. To have that kind of facility on the trumpet and that kind of knowledge of harmony and theory, because everything he played was correct, you know. Yeah. So, I mean, you guys know that.
Right.
I mean, you know, Dizzy, I can't mess with him, man. You know, so, yeah, that's a hard question to answer. Maybe my original answer, I think I would just be a better version of myself.
Well, great.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we just want to thank you and thank your wife.
Yeah. Yeah, I know she did some of the she did some of the filming or something. Did she sell some of the cameras?
Yeah. We tried to give you the best product we possibly could, and you know, it was an honor to do it, and it's an honor to have you ask me to do it. I was very excited about doing it, and I'm hoping that maybe in the future we can do some other things together.
Hopefully, yeah, and maybe live. That'd be great too.
Yeah,
that'd be fantastic.
Yep.
And make sure you thank Jim Masseth, you know, he for being in the studio, for making that happen with you. It just made it, you know, pretty special. And
oh yeah, he's the best. You know, I mean, you can see he knows what he's doing. He got a nice sound on me for that, you know. So
yeah, it was good.
I'll tell him you said hello.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey,
thanks so much, Roger. It was really a pleasure.
Say bye, Vicky.
Hey, Vicky.
Nice to meet you, Vicky.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Stay in touch with me.
Definitely will.
Yep.
All right, you guys. See you later.
Okay, bye-bye now.
Take care.
Yep.
Bye-bye.